and welcome to episode 2 of my Calathea Tropical City Build. In the last episode, we built this farming complex and a small Mediterranean-inspired town using assets from the workshop. The traffic has died down a bit now. It was pretty crazy at the end of the last episode, but I reckon it was just the trucks bringing in produce and people moving into the town. They still want more houses though, so in today's episode, I'm going to be building a much larger town using the Green City DLC and the Leisure Commercial specialisation, and then a medium-sized ore industry area. The town is going to be situated over here on the waterfront, and the ore industry is going to be along the base of this cliff. So with all that planned, let's get started. Okay, so this is my finished district. This is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be originally. Actually, the space that I was working with, I didn't realize quite how many houses were going to fit into here. And I did have a couple of problems with the demand for all three types of zoning going down to completely zero in the middle, but I think that's because the electricity grids hadn't joined up yet and no one wanted to move in because there was no electricity or water. I spent a very long time detailing this and I'm still not done with it. There's a few areas that I'm going to come back to at some point, but I tried to do little pockets of detailing here and there, so let me give you a quick tour. So over this side is more of the kind of sprawling suburbs. There's two of these natural hills that were already on the map that I've kept, and I've turned them into little kind of viewpoints. I will probably come back in later in the series and turn these into small park areas. I'll come back in and add some gazebos and things just so people actually go up to the top. So far they've been using the pathways to get from one side of the district to another, but they're not using the pathways to get all the way to the top, which is not surprising because there's nothing to actually do up there yet. So over on this side of the map is the primary school complex. This is the community elementary school from the Green Cities DLC, and I've put in a couple of the tiny parks from the Hotels and Retreats DLC next door. I think they go quite well together with all of the detailing, and I put a hedge around the back just to block off the space. And on the other side of the road is the Child Health Centre. This adventure playground from the workshop has a huge radius and gives a massive boost in the entertainment level to all of the houses pretty much in this entire district. And I put in some props next to it just to make it look like a bit more of a fleshed out space. So going into the centre of the town, I've left these two bits open to put in these kind of strip plazas. They're from the workshop and they have a great entertainment level and they really draw tourists in from all over the place. I have some of these in one of my other builds, and when I put them down, there was literally hundreds of people getting off of the subway to come to these parks. So hopefully they'll draw lots of people in. On this side of the road, there is a high school and a little entertainment complex. I like to use a basketball court and a skate park next to high schools because I feel like they go quite well together, and I've done little bits of detailing around the edge just to make sure there's no empty gaps. When it comes to the commercial, I've tried to make sure that none of the buildings are too tall because tall buildings really stick out in a district like this. I've made sure that all of these little blocks of commercial have areas that make sense, so the parking spaces can be reached. I've added little tables out the front of some of them. I've changed some of the props with the bob tool to make sure that they look right. And I filled in some of the blank areas like back here with the surface painter tool and added some parking spaces just to make sure that we don't have any weird kind of sandy grassy areas in between all of the commercial buildings that are different sizes. So I've left some gaps where people could drive in, they're not going to because it's not technically a road, and I don't think these parking spaces are usable, but at least it gives the appearance that there are parking spaces back there. Same over here, I've left some little trees in the middle, but there's a couple of parking spaces back here that I've put in, and I've put a fence in around this eating area because I don't want it looking out over a parking lot. Down here is what I like to think is the upper class houses. They're the same style as everything else, but they're out on this little spit into the water, and there's these little ones down here that are completely hidden from the rest of the town that look out over the sea. I like to think that the people that live here are super rich and they can afford to be completely private from everyone else. These guys look out over this island, and this island is going to have some really fun stuff later in the series, so they're going to have a great view once this is all finished. But something I thought was very important to have in this kind of area is marina, so I put a couple in down here on this little hidden piece of road for all the rich people and their private boats. Down here is a small line of commercial buildings lining the seafront. This is giving very touristy vibes. I like to think that people would come down here to have lunch on the seafront. There's a beach volleyball court, even though it's not technically on the beach, it's on the concrete. I was hoping that a lot of them spawn in with these benches out the back, but it looks like not many of them have. And to be honest, I really can't be bothered to go back through all of these buildings and put benches on the back of all of them. So I will probably come back to this area at some point and do a little bit more detailing, but for now, I'm going to leave it as it is. Down here is another little suburb. There is a healthcare complex here. This is a medical centre from the workshop, and I've turned this into like a kind of very purposeful area with the elder care centre, medical centre, some car parks and a little bit of detailing, and I've put a fence around the whole area. So again, these car parking spaces probably won't be used, but I thought it filled in the gap quite nicely. And I've put a hedge down this side and tried to make sure that the road is in line with the edge of this car park. Over here is a baseball court and some parking. People won't actually play baseball on it because it's from the workshop, but it's much smaller than the baseball pitch that you get on the, I believe it's the campus DLC pack. It's massive. So I thought I'd put something in this space just to give them something to do, something to go to, because there's only one small park over here, which is from the hotels and retreats pack. And then down here is a very small industrial area with a recycling centre. Now these little buildings I pulled away from the road and put together and put a little bit of detailing out the front, just a tiny bit, to make them look like a real life kind of business park. And then the same on the other side of the road. I like to think they're a bit haphazard because this is a no parking zone and yet someone's dumped a container on it. They fit in quite nicely next to the recycling centre. And this is a warehouse. I don't think this warehouse is actually being used for anything at the moment. I haven't set it to be used for anything just because the only industry we've got at the moment is farming. So I extended the back out of it, put some kind of gravel mounds and some containers. And if I need it in the future at any point, I'll be able to set it to store something. So I've tried to do detailing on all of the gaps in this town, hence the amount of pathways in between the houses. I feel like it really helps to fill in those gaps and make the spaces look nicer, even if they're only going to use them to walk from one side of a block to another. It should hopefully cut down on the amount of car traffic as well, if people can get from one place to another on foot much easier. So now that this district is complete, let's start on the ore industry. It's only going to be very, very small because there's not that much ore here. I'm going to try and fit a very thin mining complex down the foot of these mountains, far enough away from the road that it's not going to impede on anything, but it should provide a lot of jobs for the nearby houses. So let's get started. Okay, so here is the completed or industry area. I've dotted a lot of other things in this industry area, like some offices from the generic industry categorization, as well as some of the smaller or buildings from the district specialization as opposed to the DLC. Unfortunately, some of the buildings did demolish themselves and probably still will be demolishing themselves as they're demanding workers, and we unfortunately don't have enough workers yet. These offices are from the workshop and they're actually classed as unique buildings, so they add a bit of entertainment to the area, and I also put in a basketball court for the workers. This little asset is great because it actually goes over the road, so it kind of almost looks like a toll booth going into the little business park. I try not to use too many large assets, but unfortunately this one is kind of necessary for some of the unique buildings that we're going to be putting in later. So I tried to see what it would look like from the road, and it does look ugly from the road, but I might be able to hide it with some landscaping or some other thing in the middle here at some point. So I tried to use all of the little pockets in between the assets because this isn't a straight road. I tried to fill them in with some sort of smaller building and some detailing. I like to think that this area down here at the back of this car park is a little worker's hut, and that's where they can have their lunch break. I put in a fire station down here just because I know how common it is for things to set on fire and I don't want anything to be burnt down and lost. And I was hoping that these assets would make it look like they're actually going into the mountain, but unfortunately there's a lot of space at the back of this plot where I can't quite get the mountain to sit against them, but you could get the gist. This bit here is just the head offices of the ore industry area, and there's a barracks here as well, and a few more of these office buildings just to make it look like this is where all the official people work here, all the bosses who tell all of the little men over here what to do. So I'm sure that this area will destroy itself a few times, and I might come back and redo this curved road at some point just because I'm not quite sure if I like how it looks from afar. But for now, this is the ore industry area done. And these two took a very, very long time to do. Each area took at least an hour. I think the detailing on this area took an hour alone. But I hope you enjoyed watching all of the detailing, and I will be putting some extra clips on shorts and TikTok of things that I may not have necessarily shown on here, just with a little bit more detail of all of the things that I've done. I will be coming in off camera to add some more houses into some of these areas. I didn't think it was necessary to show all of the houses that I'm putting in, and a lot of the towns will end up looking very samey, so I'm not going to be showing every single one of them that I build, but I will be doing the first one of each different type, if that makes sense, just because I'm very short on time and I've got a long list of things that I want to do and I don't want to bore you with repetition. In the next episode, I'll be doing a San Francisco inspired build with some assets I've downloaded from the workshop, so make sure to tune in and see how that goes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.